Welcome back to the Revenge Chronicles, the place where real stories of betrayal, heartbreak, and shocking revenge come to life. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you don't want to miss what happens next in today's story. Now, listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you is something I never imagined could happen in my own family. When my daughter first told me she was getting married, I thought it was the happiest day of my life. She was my only child, my pride and joy, the one person I lived for after my wife passed away. But if someone had told me that her marriage would lead to the most painful and humiliating chapter of my life, I would have laughed in disbelief. And yet, here I am. Tell me if you would have done what I did, because when my son-in-law thought I was weak, he learned the hard way that he had no idea who he was dealing with. It all started 3 years ago. My daughter, Emily, was a bright and ambitious woman. She had always been the kind of person who could light up a room with her smile, and she worked hard to make a name for herself as a marketing executive. When she introduced me to Daniel, her boyfriend at the time, I'll admit, he seemed perfect. He was charming, confident, well-spoken, and polite. He said all the right things, looked me in the eye when he shook my hand, and told me how much he loved my daughter. Maybe I was just too eager to believe him, but I genuinely thought he was the kind of man who would protect and cherish her. Their wedding was beautiful. I remember standing there, watching my little girl in her white dress, holding his hand, promising forever. I was proud but also scared. I'd lost my wife 10 years before, and since then, Emily had been my entire world. The idea of her leaving home left a hollow ache inside me, but I told myself that this was how life worked. Children grow up and parents let go. I even helped them with the down payment for their first house. I wanted them to start their new life comfortably. Daniel thanked me, hugged me, and said, "You're like a second father to me." I remember smiling, not knowing those words would later taste like poison. The first year seemed fine. Emily would call, tell me about their vacations, their dinners, their plans. But slowly, her calls became less frequent. When I asked to visit, Daniel always had an excuse. "We're busy. We're traveling. Emily's tired." I didn't think much of it at first, but something in my gut told me something wasn't right. Then one night, Emily showed up at my door. Her eyes were red and her hands were shaking. She looked like a ghost of herself. She hugged me and cried in my arms, and my heart sank. She told me that Daniel had changed. He had become controlling, dismissive, cruel. He'd mock her in front of his friends, saying things like, "You should have seen her dad's tiny house, it's no wonder she has low standards." He'd tell her that her career wasn't going anywhere, and that she should focus on being a real wife. She said he'd even started drinking, and when he drank, he got angry. He never hit her, but his words cut deeper than fists. I wanted to go to his house that very night, but Emily begged me not to. "Dad, please, I just need time to think. I'll handle it." So I stayed silent. Weeks went by and I didn't hear from her. When I called, Daniel answered. His tone was cold. "Emily's fine," he said. "She's just busy." Then he hung up. I drove to their house, but when I got there, the gate was locked. I stood outside for nearly an hour, knocking, shouting her name, until finally a neighbor told me they'd gone out of town. Something felt off, horribly off. I started having nightmares about Emily, about her crying for help. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The idea that someone could be hurting my daughter and I could do nothing about it, it tore me apart. A few days later, Emily came again. This time, she wasn't crying. She looked numb. She told me she was pregnant. My heart leapt for a moment, until I saw the emptiness in her eyes. "I'm scared, Dad," she said. "He's angry about it. He says it's going to ruin his life." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What kind of man gets angry about having a child with the woman he claims to love? I told her to stay with me for a while, but she refused. "He'll come looking for me. I don't want things to get worse." I felt helpless. I wanted to protect her, but she was trapped in this twisted web of manipulation and fear. Months passed and I barely saw her. I sent her messages, gifts, even a handmade crib for the baby, but I never got a response. Then, one morning, I got a call from the hospital. Emily had given birth, a baby boy named Noah. I rushed there, tears streaming down my face, only to find Daniel already there, smiling for pictures with the baby as if he were the perfect husband. When he saw me, his smile faded. "Oh, you came," he said flatly. I ignored his tone and went straight to Emily. She was exhausted, pale, but she smiled weakly when she saw me. I tried to stay calm for her sake. But Daniel's arrogance that day was unbearable. He told the nurses I wasn't really part of the immediate family and that I should wait outside. I wanted to punch him right then and there. But I bit my tongue because Emily needed peace, not chaos. After that, Daniel started showing his true colors openly. He would ignore me at family gatherings, mock my modest income, and even once told me I was lucky that he married into my family because it raised my status. I stayed quiet, not because I was weak, but because I didn't want to cause Emily more pain. I thought if I tolerated it, things would eventually settle. But I was wrong. One day, about a year later, Emily showed up again, this time with a bruise on her cheek. That was it. That was my breaking point. I didn't care about her begging me to stay calm. I drove to Daniel's office the next morning. I'd spent my life working in construction, and though I was nearing retirement, I was still strong. I walked straight into his fancy glass office, past his confused assistant, and looked him in the eye. He smirked. "You shouldn't be here," he said, leaning back in his chair. "This is my workplace," I said, "and this is your last warning." He laughed, loud and ugly. "What are you gonna do, old man? Hit me? You think you can scare me with your dad voice? Your daughter's my wife. My property." That word, property, set me off like a match dropped in gasoline. But I didn't swing. I didn't shout. I simply looked at him and said, "You'll regret every word you just said." Then I left. That night, I started planning. If he wanted to play power games, I'd show him a game he couldn't win. You see, I wasn't just some retired construction worker. I had connections, people who respected me, people I'd helped over decades. Quietly, I started gathering information. Daniel was a financial advisor, flashy but reckless. I found out through a friend who worked in real estate that Daniel had been embezzling client money, using it to fund his luxury lifestyle. I didn't even have to dig that deep, arrogance leaves a trail. I waited for weeks, quietly documenting everything. Every transfer, every fake receipt, every piece of evidence. I had it all. But I didn't go to the police yet. I wanted him to feel untouchable first. To make him think I'd disappeared. Meanwhile, Emily had started therapy. She was slowly finding her voice again. I helped her get a lawyer and quietly advised her to prepare for a divorce. Daniel didn't know it yet, but his whole life was about to collapse. So that's the situation I was in. My daughter, finally healing, and a monster who still thought he had control. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause for a moment and tell me, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have gone to the police right away, or would you have waited for the perfect moment to make him pay? Because I waited, and I made sure that when it came, his fall would be loud. A few months later, Daniel hosted a lavish anniversary party. He invited everyone, clients, friends, family. He even sent me an invitation, probably out of arrogance, expecting I wouldn't come. But I did. I arrived wearing my old suit, calm and quiet. Emily was there too, holding Noah. She looked radiant but nervous. Daniel was surrounded by people, bragging about his business empire. I stayed at the back, waiting. When it was time for his toast, I stood up. The room went silent. Daniel smirked. "Oh, look, the old man's gonna speak." I took the microphone and said, "Actually, yes. I have a few words." I pulled a small envelope from my coat pocket and held it up. Inside this are documents that prove Daniel Parker has been stealing from his clients for over 2 years. Embezzlement, fraud, falsified tax records, you name it. I've sent copies to the authorities. They'll be here soon. The color drained from his face. He tried to laugh it off, but the murmurs in the crowd turned to gasps as I read out a few numbers, specific transfers that only he would know. People started whispering, taking out their phones. Daniel lunged forward to grab the mic, shouting that I was lying, but then, like a perfectly timed movie scene, 2 officers entered the hall. They called his name. The look on his face was pure panic. Emily clutched Noah close as they handcuffed him in front of everyone. He looked at me as they took him away, his eyes filled with hatred and disbelief. I just said, "You should never mistake kindness for weakness." The news spread like wildfire. Daniel's company collapsed within days. His clients sued him, and he was sentenced to several years in prison. Emily filed for divorce and was granted full custody of Noah. The judge even commended her for her courage. As for me, I finally felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. I'd protected my daughter. I'd avenged her pain. A year later, Emily rebuilt her life. She got a new job, moved into a new home, and started smiling again. Noah, my little grandson, became the light of my world. We'd spend weekends building toy houses together, and every time I looked at him, I felt a quiet pride. Not just because he was my blood, but because he'd never have to grow up thinking cruelty was normal. One day, Emily asked me, "Dad, do you ever regret what you did to Daniel?" I thought about it for a while. I told her no. Because what I did wasn't revenge. It was justice. Daniel's downfall taught me something about people like him. They prey on kindness because they think it's weakness. But the truth is, kindness has power. Real strength isn't loud or violent. It's patient, strategic, and unbreakable. So, if you ever find yourself in a situation where someone mistakes your silence for surrender, remember this story. Sometimes, the quiet ones are the ones you should never underestimate. If you were on my side, like this video, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were me? Would you have taken him down or walked away? And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories like this one. I'll see you all in the next story.